The Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement and for his telephone call last night. Mr. Speaker, the picture presented yesterday by the government's advisers was stark and cannot be ignored. Infections are rising, hospitalisations are rising, the trajectory is clear, and we know from bitter experience what happens next. So it is right that the Prime Minister is announcing further measures today, and we support those measures. Just as we supported lockdown in March and the more recent local lockdowns, although we fierce criticism of the way the government is handling this pandemic, when restrictions are needed, the national interest lies in clear communications and cross-party support. And so we will, as we've done before, encourage people to follow the government guidance and obey the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, families across the country will be anxious today. Many are already living under local lockdowns. Many more fear that soon they will. They're worried about their jobs, about their loved ones, and whether they will be able to spend Christmas with their families. They will also be worried that the government doesn't have a clear strategy. One day people are encouraged to work in the office. In fact, more than encouraged, they were openly challenged by the Prime Minister for not doing so. Today, they're told the opposite. This is a time of national crisis, and we need clear leadership. So it's right the Prime Minister answer a number of serious questions about the next steps. First, a number of areas in England already have localised restrictions, including some that are very similar to those announced today. Pubs and restaurants in Bolton, for example, have been told to shut at 10 p.m. for about 2 weeks. Leicester's been in localised restrictions for about 3 months, and yet the infections in those areas remain high. So can the Prime Minister be sure that the restrictions he's introducing today will be effective at suppressing the virus? And if they don't work, when does he envisage further measures might be necessary? I also want to ask about the support for families and businesses. These restrictions will put further pressures on the hospitality sector, on high streets and town centres, on people's jobs and businesses. So what emergency financial support will be made available to those that need it? There was nothing in the Prime Minister's statement about that. There's a big gap here. And will he now accept that withdrawing the furlough scheme in one fell swoop would be a disaster, and actually at complete odds with the measures he's just announced for possibly up to 6 months? And will he take us up on our offer to work with him and trade unions and businesses on a replacement scheme that protects jobs and businesses? Mr. Speaker, given the rise in infections we're seeing, these restrictions are necessary, but they were not inevitable. We warned the Prime Minister months ago that testing needed to be fixed by the autumn. The Academy of Medical Sciences told him the same in July. They said testing and tracing capacity will need to be significantly expanded to cope with the increased demands over the winter. But the government didn't listen. They pretended there wasn't a problem. They didn't act quickly enough. Now the testing system isn't working just when we need it. We should also recognise that a second national lockdown is not inevitable. That would be a huge failure of government, not an act of God. There is still time to prevent it. That must be a national effort. Labour will do whatever is reasonable and necessary to support that, to save lives, to protect the NHS. But the government must lead, and they must do so fast.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman for his support. Though I notice that it seems to come and go, but it seems to be here today. He criticises testing. He should know, Mr. Speaker, that as I've told the House many times, this country is now testing more than any other country in Europe. One test for every 5 people, and actually, in spite of the massive increase in the demand for testing, we have greatly increased the number of contacts that are being reached from the index cases, and I think he should pay tribute to those who are involved in the whole testing operation, in spite of all the difficulties that they face. He mentions the success of local lockdowns, and he's absolutely right to draw attention to what happened in Leicester, and that was a heroic effort of local people, and it's happened in other parts of the country, local people pulling together to drive the virus down. That is what we hope to encourage throughout the country, and that is certainly part of our strategy. He asked, Mr. Speaker, about what we're doing to support business, to support families and to support communities across the country, as though we hadn't already quite rightly spent £160 billion, Mr. Speaker, to support business and jobs across the country, jobs and livelihoods, and we will continue to put our arms around the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful, as I say, for what he has said, for the support such as it is that he has offered. But what I can tell him is that in putting forward the message of support, I hope he will also say to everybody in his constituency and elsewhere that this is a balanced and a proportionate response to the crisis that we face. We are driving the virus down. That is our objective by these measures. But we are also, as I said, Mr. Speaker, keeping the vast majority of the UK economy going. That is our programme. That is what we intend to do. This is a package. This is a package to drive down the R, but also to allow education and jobs and the growth to continue. And that is absolutely vital for the Right Honourable Gentleman to understand. And I hope in his support, which I welcome, he will communicate that to the country as well.